Welcome back to our Genesis verse by verse class. Today we are looking in chapter 31, and Jacob is in a transitional time in his life and in the life of the future nation Israel. It begins fleeing fear and embracing faith. Heavenly Father, we ask that you bless the reading of your word to our understanding. Help us to apply these truths to our life and our walk with you. In Jesus' name, amen. So Laban is understanding that God has blessed him all these many years for the sake of Jacob. And Jacob's ready to leave. He's had enough. And this is all part of God's perfect timing for Jacob to move on the storyline of God's plan for the ages to bring about not only the 12 tribes of Israel, which were born through his 12 sons, but now they separate from Laban, kind of a picture of the world, and into the new realm of nation building, kingdom building, as God had foresaw and foretold to all that come before him. And the promises of Abraham are coming to pass. So Jacob hears the words of Laban's sons. There's a little scuttlebutt going on saying Jacob has taken away all that was our father's, and from what was our father's he has acquired all his wealth. So they're grumbling because Jacob had been breeding the cattle, and under the agreement he and Laban had made that any cattle that would come forth that had flaws, blemishes, streaks, or were spotted would be Jacob's, and all the purebred, all the desirable cattle would remain with Laban. And Laban agreed to that, thinking he was getting a better end of the deal. Well, God was controlling the breeding here, and it seems like everything was coming up spotted and streaked and was belonging to Jacob. And Jacob got the daughters of Laban over the years to be his wife, and their handmaids, and everything Jacob touched in Laban's household was just being blessed by God. And he understood that, and he didn't want Jacob to leave, but Jacob was leaving, but committed several more years of labor to build up his provisions, his wealth, through the procreation of the cattle and the agreement they made. So Jacob saw the countenance of Laban, saw Laban's face, was not pleased, and indeed it was not favorable toward him as before. Then the Lord said to Jacob, "Return to the land." So that's a familiar phrase. We've heard that spoken of to his father Isaac, and before him to the land that God had prepared for Abraham to take. He said, leave your home and return to the land that I've prepared for you. Well, here's that phrase again, return to the land of your fathers. Now he's going back to Isaac, to your family, and I will be with you. A promise that God will never leave him or forsake him. He is the seed of promise. And so this is getting very exciting. It's stepping out in faith. It's the unknown, but knowing that God has got him and his plan will come through and his promises will come through. Very exciting for all of us to realize that's true in our lives, our walk with the Lord. So return to the land. So this has been another 6 years of gathering these streaked and spotted cattle and building up provision and wealth. And now it was time to go. But now it's God's perfect timing. God's giving the directive. Now's the time. So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah to the field to his flock. Now this was a private meeting. He didn't want any of Laban's sons to overhear what they were saying. He brought them out from the crowd and had a private meeting to discuss this plan that they were leaving. They were picking up and moving back to his father's family. And he didn't want them profiting, Laban's family profiting anymore. And they were going to make their plans to leave. And so that's what they did. And he said to them out in the field, I see your father's countenance, that it's not favorable toward me as before, but the God of my father has been with me. So there was no denying that. And you know that with all my might, I've served your father. And here's the deal. We're seeing your father, my father. The contrast here can't go unnoticed because their father, the wife's father, Laban, was showing rejection, not only of the God of Abraham, of the God of Jacob, but Jacob himself. And God, the God of Isaac, his father that he was returning to, of course, was in favor of and acceptable of God. And so there's no doubt at all that Jacob, over these 20 years, has worked extremely hard for Laban. Laban got his money worth out of Jacob. And really probably anyone that worked for him. He was a hard man, a taskmaster. Yet your father has deceived me and changed my wages 10 times. But God did not allow him to hurt me. So over the years, Laban tried to cheat him, but God intervened. Those 20 years, his wages changed 10 times. But God overrode those wage changes and brought about great prosperity and blessing in spite of all that craziness. If he said thus, the speckled shall be your wages, then all the flocks bore speckled. And if he said thus, the streaked shall be your wages, then all the flocks bore streaked. I mean, there was no getting around God's blessing Jacob. As much as Laban tried to change the rules, God went with the changes and blessed. So God has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. Sounds like Laban's left with very little, and Jacob's leaving with a great deal. And it happened at the time when the flocks conceived that I lifted my eyes and saw in a dream, and behold, the rams which leaped upon the flocks were streaked, speckled, and gray-spotted. Then the angel of God spoke to me in a dream, saying, Jacob. And I said, Here I am. And he said, Lift your eyes now and see, all the rams which leap on the flocks are streaked, speckled, and gray-spotted, for I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. You know, God sees the wrongdoing that comes upon his people, and we should take heart in that and be blessed by that, knowing that God is in control. God made the livestock give birth so Jacob would take all from Laban. God was manipulating the breeding, and God will manipulate the circumstances we find ourselves in life, good, bad, and indifferent, to bring glory to his name and to bless his children. So just trust in God no matter what's coming your way. He says, I am the God of Bethel. And he says that he's the God of Bethel because that's where Jacob first met him. If you'll remember that when he was just a teenager some 20 years ago, he was just a young man running away. That first night away from home, he spent it at Bethel, if you'll recall. Well, God's reminding him, I've been with you all these 20 years, and so I continue to work my will and way through your life. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed the pillar and where you made a vow to me. Now arise, get out of this land, and return to the land of your family. Then Rachel and Leah they answered and said to him, Is there still any portion of inheritance for us in our father's house? It's kind of interesting. Is there anything left that we have coming to us in our father's house? Our inheritance. We're not going to see him again. We're leaving for good. We want our inheritance. Are we not considered strangers by him? I mean, he's not even being kind to his own daughters, for he has sold us and also completely consumed our money. He's taken all their blessings and kept that from them. And for all these riches which God has taken from our father are really ours and our children's. Now then, whatever God has said to you, do it. Great advice from his wives here. Whatever God says, do it. Laban can't be trusted, and they know that about their father now. Unfortunately, there's many Christians today that demonstrate in the way they handle their own money and their own blessings, and the money of others and the property of others, that they can't be trusted either. When you're entrusted with things of value, that's really a test of your individual character before God. You either have character and integrity or you don't. And I've seen Christians and Christian leaders waste what God has entrusted to them. And I've seen this many times over the years. And these two women are to be admired. They tell Jacob whatever he wants to do. They stand with him. Apparently, they felt their father had robbed them. So it's time to go. It's God's perfect timing. He says go. Jacob had already been wanting to go. Now it is the time to leave. Then Jacob rose and set his sons and his wives on camels. And he carried away all his livestock, all his possessions which he had gained, his acquired livestock which he had gained in Paddan Aram, to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. Now Laban had gone to shear his sheep. And you've got to understand, Laban, to shear his sheep, though he didn't have the mighty flocks he had once had, but still he had a great amount. To separate them from Jacob's cattle, he would have to go a long ways, several miles perhaps, and they needed the space to graze. But he's going out now. He's traveling some days away to shear his sheep. But it was while he was gone, it says, and Rachel had stolen the household idols that were her father's. Now, these household items were commonly found in the households of this particular ancient culture, and they were known as teraphim, and they were small images. They were really idols, household deities, gods, kind of like not only a religious item, but a good luck charm, really. And they looked like this. They were just little stone idols. And she wanted the household idols. Now, oftentimes this had to do with the inheritance that was alluded to earlier in the verses, that whoever possessed these idols was like the firstborn birthright type thing, where the estate, once the father died, once Laban would pass, would go to whoever had the household idols. So this was an important thing to them in their culture. And but yeah, it was idol worship, and that was where, really, even though Laban understood there is a God of Jacob that had been blessing, he didn't consider him the one and only God, evidently. So Jacob stole away unknown to Laban, the Syrian, and that he did not tell him that he intended to flee. So while Laban's out shearing the sheep some miles away, Jacob picks up house with his wives and leaves with all that he has. So he fled with all that he had. He arose and crossed the river and headed toward the mountains of Gilead. And Laban was told on the third day that Jacob had fled. It probably took him 3 days to get back home. Then he took his brethren with him and pursued him for 7 days' journey. And he overtook him in the mountains of Gilead. 7 days it took him to catch up. Now, Jacob had only been gone for 3 days, but it took him 7 days. That tells us that Jacob was moving quick. They were moving with purpose, and they were fleeing out of fear of what was coming when Laban finds out that they up and left without telling him. So they must have really been moving, because it took Laban 7 days to catch up. But God had come to Laban the Syrian in a dream by night, and said to him, be careful that you speak to Jacob neither good nor bad. So Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the mountains, and Laban with his brethren pitched in the mountains of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, what have you done? that you've stolen away unknown to me and carried away my daughters like captives, taken with the sword? You kidnapped my daughters. What's this about?" He was pretty upset. And so that's probably why and how he traveled as far as he did. He was enraged. He was catching up as quick as he could, but it still took a while. And he says, "You've like kidnapped my daughters." Laban evidently he couldn't believe that his daughters would agree to this type of a departure. Like Jacob must have kidnapped them and forced them to leave like this. Certainly they would have stayed behind and had proper goodbyes. And they were leaving under duress. This can't be possible any other way. "Why did you flee away secretly and steal away from me and not tell me? For I might have sent you away with joy and songs and with timbrel and harp. I wanted to have a going away party, don't you know?" And he just couldn't believe it. Well, I don't think he really would have done that if they had stayed and left the normal way. That's just not in him to do that. It doesn't seem anyways. He goes on to say, "You did not allow me to kiss my sons and my daughters. Now you've done foolishly in so doing." So the sons would be his grandsons, of course. They're the 12 tribes of Israel, the future nation that's leaving him. And God's moving them on so they can become that nation of promise. "It is in my power to do you harm, but the God of your father spoke to me." Notice he says the God of your father, Isaac. Even though God's speaking to Laban in dreams and Laban's receiving the blessings of God through Jacob, his God's son, God's man, so to speak, he still doesn't have a monotheistic belief system, worldview. He believes there's many gods. "Be careful that you speak to Jacob neither good nor bad's what your God told me. And now you have surely gone because you greatly long for your father's house. That's the reason. But why did you steal my gods?" Then Jacob answered and said to Laban, "Because I was afraid, for I said, perhaps you would take your daughters from me by force." Now, he's not answering at this point, "Why did you steal my gods?" He's answering the first question of being accused of kidnapping his daughters and leaving without telling him. He didn't know that Rachel had stolen the household teraphim, the idols, the gods. And when he answers Laban, he's answering about his running away without letting him know. So he said, "With whomever you find your gods, do not let him live. In the presence of our brethren, identify what I have of yours and take it with you." For Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them. And so he's saying, go ahead, look around, see if you find anything. They didn't trust each other. They had no confidence in each other. I mean, you got to imagine it has not been a pleasant 20 years of existing around each other. Laban went in to Jacob's tent, into Leah's tent, into the two maids' tents, but he did not find them. Then he went out of Leah's tent and entered Rachel's tent. Now, Rachel had taken the household idols, but put them in the camel's saddle. It would be the box, one of several boxes perhaps that were tied to the camel. They called them saddles also, and they would contain whatever they were transferring from place to place. This camel saddle, she was sitting on them, and Laban searched all about the tent but did not find them. She had them in that little camel saddle. And she said to her father, "Let it not displease my lord that I cannot rise before you, for the manner of women is with me." That time of the month had come upon her, and nobody's going to have her inconvenience herself to get up from where she was at. And he searched but did not find the household idols. So she lied. And A very serious situation here. The possession of those household teraphim, those household gods, implied leadership and implied the rights of the firstborn. And think about that. That's the reason Laban was so upset. He surely didn't want Jacob to end up with his entire estate. He's already gotten too much already. Then Jacob was angry and rebuked Laban. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, "What is my trespass? What is my sin that you have so hotly pursued me?" Can you imagine the situation, the family bearing witness to this argument? Jacob is finally getting some confidence and rebuking Laban after 20 years of serving him in grief. So he's letting it all out now. "Although you have searched all my things, what part of your household things have you found? Set it here before my brethren and your brethren, that they may judge between us both." Let's get it all out on the table here. And he's voicing his complaints. He's kind of passed the course of hard knocks, and today's the day he gets his diploma. And let's put it all out for all to see. "These 20 years I've been with you, your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried their young." He was an expert shepherd. "And I have not eaten the rams of your flock." You know, Laban wouldn't even give him a free meal, a complimentary meal for tending as a servant his flocks all these years. He was not going to take of Laban's flock for any meals. And so it sounds like Laban's very, very stingy, and he had to pay for those if he wanted to have them for any meals. "That which was torn by beast I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it." He paid for the losses of the flocks. "You required it from my hand, whether stolen by day or stolen by night." I mean, you made me do that, and I did it. I was faithful in all that I've done, and you benefited from it. Laban was a hard taskmaster, no doubt. When a lamb was stolen or killed by a wild animal, Jacob had to pay for it. "There I was in the day, the drought consumed me, and the frost by night, and my sleep departed from my eyes." It was a hard life tending to his flocks and making him prosper. He didn't get a vacation in the summer. When the weather was cold, he stayed up all the time, day and night with the sheep. He was protecting the animals. Many nights he would be fending off wild animals to keep the flock safe. He was a good shepherd. "Thus, I have been in your house 20 years. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters. Remember that? And 6 years for your flock. And you've changed my wages 10 times. He was changing the wages, the deal, 10 times over those years, because he kept seeing that Jacob was being prospered by God, and he was losing and losing and losing as Jacob kept winning and winning. He says, "Unless the God of my father, the God of Abraham, the fear of Isaac." Oh, that's an interesting phrase, the fear of Isaac. So he's differentiating the difference between the gods they were worshiping. "Unless the God of my father, the God of Abraham." Okay, so we know he's the one true God. "And the fear of Isaac." Okay, so the fear of Isaac's kind of a phrase to indicate the same God that made agreements and promises to his father Isaac. That awesome reverential fear is the God that I am also serving, and who has made promises to me also. Those promises of Isaac and Abraham have traveled to me, been passed on. They had been with me. Surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. If you had your way, Laban, you would have kicked me out a long time ago. God has seen my affliction and the labor of my hands and rebuked you last night. God showed up in a dream and said, "Don't you say anything bad about my my man Jacob. And Laban answered and said to Jacob, these daughters are my daughters, and these children are my children, and this flock is my flock. All that you see is mine. But what can I do this day to these my daughters or to their children whom they have borne? Now therefore come, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me. Okay. Jacob's kind of flying the flag of surrender, kind of half-heartedly here. He's saying, we got to make an agreement. We got to agree to disagree. We're at odds. It's not going to get better. We have to go our separate ways. But I don't want to have to be looking over my shoulder for you attacking me or causing me harm or robbing me, Laban's thinking. And I bet Jacob feels the same way. So they're trying to make a peace deal here. So Jacob took up a stone and set it up as a pillar, like they would in the ancient days for covenants. Then Jacob said to his brethren, gather stones. And they took stones and made a heap, and they ate there on the heap. Laban called it Jegar Sahadutha, but Jacob called it Gilead. Now, both titles, one is in Hebrew. Jacob's is heap of witness. In the Hebrew is Gilead, and it also means heap of witness in Laban's native language of Aramaic. So Laban said, this heap is a witness between you and me this day. Therefore, its name was called Gilead. Also, Mizpah. Now, why has it got even another name added to it? Well, Mizpah means watch. And so they both agreed that's what it means, because he said, may the Lord watch between you and me when we are absent from one another. So they're committing to the Lord to be the peacekeeper, to keep them both safe from each other. And so hence the name watch, that they won't steal from each other anymore. If you afflict my daughters, or if you take other wives beside my daughters, although no man is with us, see, God is witness between you and me. So, rightfully said. Then Laban said to Jacob, here is this heap, and here is this pillar, which I've placed between you and me. This heap is a witness. They don't have a man to witness, but they have a formal witness anyway. They have the two families that are witnessing this, but they're making God the witness, and it's symbolic through the heap of stones on each side and the pillar here. And this pillar is a witness that I will not pass beyond this heap to you, and you will not pass beyond this heap and this pillar to me for harm. For harm. Again, the separation of the gods that they both serve, the God of Abraham, and then it says the God of Nahor. Abraham's grandfather, Nahor, and the God of their father judge between us. Nahor was more of a polytheistic God of the culture type worshiper, not like Abraham, who recognized and only worshiped the God of heaven. So yeah, the God of Nahor kind of points to how Laban views gods, multiple polytheistic worldview, many gods. And Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. So no matter who or what idea that Laban had concerning God, Jacob's making it clear, I'm swearing to the God of all creation, the God of my father, my grandfather Abraham, and my father Isaac. Not the viewpoint of many gods like Nahor had way back when. That seems to be where you're at, Laban. Now, I'm just letting you know, I'm not going down that viewpoint. And Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac, the God who Isaac feared, making a delineation between the two belief systems. Then Jacob offered a sacrifice on the mountain and called his brethren to eat bread, and they ate bread and stayed all night on the mountain. And early in the morning, Laban arose, kissed his sons and daughters, and blessed them. Then Laban departed and returned to his place. So it's like the cord has been severed. Jacob, his wives, the 12 tribes of Israel that will be born through his sons, they're on their way for God to fulfill his plan of making that great nation Israel. Jacob has matured quite a bit over the last 20 years, and he's paid dearly for his deceiving ways. He's learned a lot through dealing with Laban over the years, but it's time to grow up. And as he matures, God continues to increase his faith, and we see the promises of Abraham and Isaac coming through Jacob and his sons in a very big way during his lifetime. Next week, we see another major leap in his maturing process with the Lord and the Lord's plan for him, as we look at the man who wrestled with God. See you next week.